Imagine drifting alone in the open sea. No wind, no current, just you and the vast, endless blue. In that moment, motivation is like a fleeting breeze, sometimes strong, sometimes gone without warning. You feel the push, the excitement, and then, just as quickly, you're still stuck, directionless. How many times have we waited for that breeze to move? How many promises are born in the heat of emotion, only to die in the cold of routine? We live in a time obsessed with feeling like it. We chase motivational videos, punchy quotes, instant rewards. But what happens when that feeling doesn't come? When your body is heavy, your mind hesitates, and every part of you cries out for comfort. That's when something tougher, colder, but far more reliable must take over. Discipline. It doesn't ask how you're doing. It doesn't negotiate. It simply moves, firm, blind, unshakable. The Stoics never waited for a mood to act. Marcus Aurelius wrote to himself like he was sharpening his soul. Seneca warned of wasting time. Epictetus reminded us that control starts within. To them, true freedom didn't come from inspiration, but from habit, from inner command, from doing what must be done, even without desire, even without praise. Today, we mistake discipline for rigidity, for a joyless life. But what if it's the opposite? What if discipline is what frees us from the slavery of moods, emotional swings, and addiction to instant gratification? This video is an invitation to explore that idea deeply, to understand why discipline, quiet and unpopular, builds inner empires while motivation, no matter how brilliant, vanishes like steam. Let's uncover why the ancient minds knew that waiting for motivation means risking a life stuck in place, and how to forge an inner strength that doesn't crumble, even when everything else does. Now that you've learned the name of the breeze, are you ready to find the helm? We live in a culture addicted to stimulation. Motivation has become a product. It's in rise and grind videos, Instagram quotes, dramatic montages with epic music and fiery speeches. But beneath the inspiring surface lies a subtle trap, the idea that we should only act when we feel like it. Every day, thousands of people make decisions driven by fleeting impulses. They start diets after watching body transformations on TikTok, sign up for gyms after one motivational video, launch projects full of fire, only to shatter like thin glass days later. Because motivation, no matter how strong, is temporary. It comes from outside, a phrase, a result, an image. And everything that comes from outside can vanish just as easily. Motivation is like a match lit in the wind. Bright, hot, inspiring, but impossible to sustain. You can light dozens of them, but none will illuminate the entire path. How many times have you started a day with clear plans, goals written down, energy high, only for it all to collapse after one argument, one message, one headache? How many dreams die between the thrill of starting and the first dip in desire? Our mistake is believing motivation is meant to carry us, but it was never built for that. The Stoics didn't wait for inspiration. Epictetus taught, freedom is the only good that requires internal mastery. He wasn't talking about political or financial freedom, but the kind that lets you act when every part of you wants to stop. Marcus Aurelius forced himself to rise even when his body begged for more sleep. In his meditations, he asked, were you born to lie in bed under warm blankets, or to fulfill your role as a human being? There was no anger in his words, only clarity. He understood that relying on feeling like it is surrendering to volatility. Seneca once wrote something that echoes loudly today. No wind is favorable for the sailor who doesn't know where to go. In other words, why wait for the breeze of motivation if you have no direction? Without discipline, the wind may carry you. But to where? We become experts at starting. We buy planners, make lists, attend webinars. But few become masters of staying the course. And here lies the core truth. Motivation is an invitation. Discipline is a decision. While motivation waits for the perfect moment, discipline moves in the present. Even if the moment is imperfect. Let's take a familiar example. Someone decides to run every morning. On day one, excitement rules. New shoes, favorite playlist, fresh air on the face. By day 5, the bed is more inviting. Energy drops. The novelty wears off. Motivation vanishes. That's the crossroads. Either you move through the apathy, or you join the millions who almost made it. Discipline is what lifts the body without discussion. It doesn't try to persuade. It simply does. Some call it rigid, cold, joyless. But it's the opposite. Discipline is the highest form of self-respect. It's caring for your future self, even when your present self is tired or bored. It's the shield against procrastination, the antidote to self-sabotage, the quiet that drowns out excuses. And the most beautiful part? It's trainable. The Stoics weren't born ready. They trained. They stumbled. They tried again. They wrote to themselves like warriors keeping journals of the battlefield. They knew the real enemy wasn't the world outside. It was their own unstable inner world. Maybe we've forgotten that. We want results without discomfort, change without resistance, victory without sacrifice. But life doesn't work that way. Consistency beats any emotional spark. It builds reputation, shapes character, and ultimately defines destiny. If motivation is the loud guest who drops in unannounced, discipline is the quiet one who cleans the house every day. And maybe it's time to invite it to stay. Because the real question isn't, how do I stay motivated every day? The question is, who am I on the days when I feel absolutely nothing? And maybe, in that silent emptiness, is where our truth lives. When the lights go out, the applause stops, and no one is watching. What remains? What remains is habit, inner command, the ability to act even if the soul is in ruins, even if your mind is fogged. That's where self-discipline reveals its essence. It's like an invisible warrior, fighting not for glory, but for integrity. It needs no audience, no likes. It simply fulfills the promise it made to itself. And that's where Stoic philosophy becomes a beacon again. It doesn't ask us to be emotionless, but unshakable. Not cold, but constant. It reminds us that the highest good isn't feeling good, but becoming someone worthy of your own trust. And when that happens, something shifts. You stop waiting to be inspired. You start acting from principle, not feeling. And soon, you don't need the feeling at all. But that raises a deeper question. If motivation fails, how do we train this silent strength? How do we build, in practice, this invisible force that isn't swayed by mood, weather, or emotion? Self-discipline doesn't come ready-made. It doesn't arrive overnight like a revelation. It is sculpted, like marble under the chisel of repetition. But here's a common misconception. We think discipline is reserved for the strong, for athletes, monks, geniuses. We treat it as a distant virtue, unreachable for those who wake up late, forget appointments, or feel exhausted by simple tasks. But the Stoics thought differently. To them, discipline wasn't a gift. It was a daily training of the soul. Epictetus said, "No great thing is created suddenly, not even the soul." It reminds us of something essential. Discipline doesn't ask for perfection, only that you return, consistently and with resolve. In practice, it begins with small gestures, waking up on time, even without motivation, organizing your space before starting the day, saying no to what wastes your time, even when no one is watching. These choices may seem insignificant, but together, they build the foundation of a trustworthy character. And character is what remains when the feeling is gone. Picture a bridge built from ordinary stones. None stand out on their own, but together, they carry the weight of the crossing. That's discipline, a collection of small acts sustaining massive journeys. In the modern world, we're taught to chase intensity, 21-day challenges, radical changes, visible results in a week. But discipline doesn't care about urgency. It honors consistency. Marcus Aurelius didn't write to impress. He wrote to remind himself, every day, of the kind of man he wanted to become. He repeated ideas. He corrected weaknesses, not because he was weak, but because he knew the mind must be trained like the body. And here's the point most people ignore. You don't need to feel like being disciplined. You only need to act as if you were, until you are. That's not hypocrisy. That's philosophical practice. It's choosing to act from your rational nature, even when your emotions beg for comfort. Seneca said suffering often comes more from anticipation than from the actual effort. How many times have we avoided something because it seemed heavy, only to realize, once we started, it wasn't so bad? Discipline dissolves the fear of action. Not because it makes things easier, but because it removes hesitation. And yes, there will be days when every part of you resists, when the bed feels like a warm, persuasive invitation, when your mind whispers excuses in the voice of reason. That's when discipline shows its true face. It's not willpower, it's memory. The memory of why you started, what you promised, what you refused to abandon. There are strategies to make this easier. Create rituals. Don't depend on decisions. Put your actions on moral autopilot, like brushing your teeth. You don't negotiate with a toothbrush. You just do it. Remove temptations. Discipline isn't about proving how strong you are against distractions. It's about avoiding unnecessary battles. Visualize the long term. Ask yourself, does this choice bring me closer or further from the life I want? If the answer is further, then you already know. Document your journey. Writing, like the Stoics did, is more than recording. It's a dialogue with your own mind. Reading your own words reminds you you're shaping yourself. And when no one is watching, that's one of the most revealing questions of self-discipline. Do you follow through or relax because no one will notice? The answer defines more than your performance. It defines your silent integrity. Discipline is a commitment to the unseen, to what you promised in silence, to the past versions of yourself who trusted you'd stay the course. It's easy to hold form when recognition is present, harder when there's only silence, no praise, no results, no visible reflection. But it's in that exact silence that the Stoics saw the greatest opportunity to do good for the sake of good, not for the reward. Marcus Aurelius wrote countless pages he never imagined the world would read. He wrote for himself, not to impress, but to remember. And maybe that's what we're missing most today. A sacred space to remember who we're trying to become. When you practice discipline day after day, even without witnesses, you begin to build a quiet confidence. Not the kind that relies on achievements, but the kind that comes from knowing that even in silence, you honored what matters. And with that, what once felt like effort becomes ritual. What once was discomfort turns into clarity. What once was effort becomes identity. You stop trying to be disciplined. You become disciplined. And that changes everything. Because now, the world can spin faster. The noise can rise. Motivation can vanish. But you remain steady, like a rock facing the sea. Which leads us to a question few dare to ask. What happens when even discipline begins to waver? When the body is present, but the mind no longer finds meaning? We live in the age of immediacy, a world where everything is measurable, trackable, shareable. Likes, metrics, before and after shots, real-time evolution. And in this environment, discipline meets a new enemy, the need for visible progress. The truth is simple, but uncomfortable. Not every effort brings immediate results. Most real progress happens invisibly, and that's frustrating. You start waking up early, but no one notices. You start training, but your body doesn't change in the first weeks. You avoid vices, manage impulses, resist chaos. But from the outside, everything looks the same. And in that silence of results, many give up. Not because discipline failed, but because they expected instant rewards. That's the trap. We confuse effort with spectacle. We want to feel like we're always progressing. But true discipline demands something much harder. To act rightly, even when nothing changes yet. Seneca said time reveals everything, but also tests everything. And perhaps the hardest test is to continue, not knowing if it's working. The modern logic says, if there are no results, it doesn't work. The Stoic logic says, if it's the right thing, continue, even if no one sees. That difference changes everything. Epictetus reminded us to focus only on what we can control. And what we can control isn't the impact, but the integrity of the action. A farmer plants without seeing the seed sprout. He doesn't dig up the soil every morning to check. He trusts the invisible process, because he knows what truly grows, grows in the dark. Discipline works the same way. You repeat actions day after day. No applause, no proof, no guarantees. And that takes a rare form of strength, blind patience. Most people don't quit from physical exhaustion. They quit because they don't see results, because they expected a cinematic transformation and found only the quiet repetition of habits. But it's that very repetition that's shaping you. What you don't see in the mirror shows in your gaze. What doesn't change on the scale changes in how you respond. What doesn't become a number becomes internal solidity. Marcus Aurelius wrote reflections for years, never imagining they'd cross centuries. He wasn't seeking validation. He was seeking coherence. Maybe that's the real secret. When you stop waiting for external proof that you're on the right path, you start feeling quietly that you are. But it's a subtle feeling, almost imperceptible, like the difference between a full glass and one that overflows. You only notice after it's passed. True progress doesn't announce itself. It arrives disguised as tranquility, as peace in small decisions, as strength in moments where before you would have given in. To endure this invisible season, you must train a new lens, a way of seeing progress that isn't based on results, but on honest repetition. Did you wake up and follow through on your promise? Did you resist something that used to control you? Did you do the right thing, even when tired? And there was progress, even if the world doesn't see, even if no one claps, even if nothing visibly changes. This kind of discipline is silent, but deeply transformative. It grows roots before flowers. It strengthens what cannot be measured. It's like sculpting a statue in the dark. You don't see what you're shaping, but you feel the form emerge beneath your hands. And one day, without warning, the light comes on, and there you are, unrecognizable. But that doesn't mean the journey is painless. Waiting without evidence hurts. Acting without return is draining. Continuing without guarantees demands more than strength. It demands faith in yourself. The Stoics called this self-mastery. It's not naive belief. It's the trust that living by reason and virtue is always worth it, even if the world ignores you, even if the rewards arrive late. And if you resist the urge to abandon the path, you join a quiet minority, those who build underground, far from the spotlight. And when they rise, they no longer need to prove anything. But that kind of steadiness isn't always automatic. Sometimes it needs to be reignited, especially when the outer world starts clashing with the inner one. And so another question arises. How do you stay disciplined when your environment is against you? When everything around you, people, routines, noise, tries to pull you away from yourself? The struggle isn't always internal. Sometimes the greatest challenge comes from the outside. You try to build a solid routine, but live in a noisy home. You aim to stay focused, but your friends mock your goals. You crave silence, but you're surrounded by urgency, distraction, and pressure. In these settings, discipline can feel like a house of cards, fragile, unstable, vulnerable to the slightest breeze. But the Stoics faced similar environments. They didn't live in caves, isolated from society. They lived in palaces, in wars, in markets, in courts. And even then, they insisted on inner rule, the idea that your mind can become a fortress, even in the midst of chaos. Epictetus was born a slave. He was beaten, humiliated, yet he wrote about inner freedom. Because he understood, external conditions don't define who you are, your response to them does. It's easy to be disciplined in a monastery, harder in traffic, in deadlines, in noise, in mockery. But that's where true strength is forged. A hostile environment isn't an excuse, it's a training ground. Imagine a warrior training with added weight. When the real battle comes, he moves with ease. Daily adversity, as exhausting as it is, can become emotional resistance. But this demands a shift in mindset. The first shift is acceptance. Accept the environment as it is, not as you wish it were. Seneca said, "It is part of the cure to want to be cured." In this case, it is part of discipline to want to stay steady, even when conditions aren't ideal. Waiting for the world to cooperate is handing your power over to chance. Acceptance isn't resignation. It's letting go of the fight against what can't be changed for now. The second shift is protecting the essential. You can't shield everything, but you can shield something. You can protect 30 minutes of your day. You can protect one corner of your home. You can protect what enters your mind. And that alone is powerful. Most people don't fail from lack of time. They fail from lack of strategy, from trying to focus in noise, instead of creating tiny islands of silence, even if improvised, even if small. The third shift is filtering the voices around you. Those who laugh at your discipline aren't mocking you. They're escaping themselves. Your consistency confronts their instability, and it's easier to laugh at others than to face the mirror. Marcus Aurelius said, "The best revenge is to be unlike them." In other words, the most powerful answer to mockery is to keep doing what you know you must do. In unfavorable environments, the world will test your limits. It will throw fatigue, distraction, pressure, and comparison your way. And yes, you will fail. You will break your routine. You'll give in to distraction. You'll forget your promises. But that's not failure. That's the battlefield. And in the battle, success doesn't mean never falling. It means rising again, clearly. Discipline is not a straight line. It's a cycle. Focus, noise, fall, recovery. What matters is how often you return to yourself. And there are tools that help. Create visual anchors. Quotes that bring you back. Words that ground you. Stick them to your wall, your phone, your mirror. Reduce friction. Keep your tools visible. Have realistic backup plans for when chaos takes over. And breathe. Yes, just that. Conscious pauses. Deep breaths. Moments of anchoring that bring you inward, even when the world is spinning out of control. Because in the end, discipline isn't about having total control. It's about not losing yourself when everything's out of place. And the truth is, the world will never be fully favorable. There will always be something pulling you off track. And that's exactly why discipline is so valuable. It doesn't depend on conditions. It is the response to conditions. And the Stoics knew, those who only act when things are calm will never be strong enough to act when everything falls apart. So instead of wishing for a perfect environment, train to stay grounded in any environment. That's rarer. That's more powerful. That's Stoic. But even when you've learned how to protect yourself, there's a hidden danger. You can become too rigid, closed off, hardened, and so a new challenge appears. How do you balance discipline with softness? How do you stay focused without becoming a prisoner of your own system? Discipline can be a force of construction, but if misunderstood, it can also become a prison. What was meant to liberate can start to suffocate. When discipline becomes rigidity, something is lost. Lightness, adaptability, inner listening. And with that, the pursuit of consistency risks turning into internal tyranny. Some people start well. They build routines. They keep promises. But slowly, they become hostages of an unattainable ideal. They punish themselves for slipping. They feel guilty for resting. They hate themselves for not producing. That's not self-discipline. That's self-violence. Stoic philosophy never preached self-contempt. On the contrary, it invites clarity, not punishment. Marcus Aurelius wrote to himself with firmness, yes, but also with compassion. He acknowledged his flaws. He admitted his impulses, but he never abandoned himself because of them. Seneca said, "We must be strict with ourselves, but gentle with others." The modern mistake is to reverse this. We are harsh with ourselves and permissive with distractions. Maintaining discipline doesn't mean demanding the impossible. It means holding direction, even when the pace changes. It means falling and rising, not falling and crushing yourself. Picture a bowstring pulled too tight. If constantly stretched to its limit, it snaps. The same is true for you. Consistency doesn't require extreme tension. It requires respect for your real limits. This is not an excuse for laziness. It's emotional wisdom. It's understanding that sometimes rest is what allows you to continue. Epictetus spoke about accepting the nature of things, and part of our nature is fluctuation. Not all days will be the same. Not all seasons will be productive. And that's okay. True discipline doesn't ignore this. It includes it. But how can you tell when you're being disciplined and when you're just being obsessive? Here's a filter. Does your discipline bring you closer to your essence or push you away from it? Are you acting with clarity or out of fear of failing? Are you building something or try to atone for guilt? Healthy discipline creates quiet strength. You feel more whole, more grounded, even on bad days. Rigidity creates constant tension. You act out of obligation, not choice. And over time, you break. To avoid that, cultivate what the Stoics called ataraxia, a tranquil soul. It doesn't mean passivity. It means balance, presence, the ability to stay the course without losing your peace. And this is built through simple principles. First, accept failure as part of the process. not as an enemy. Each mistake is a pattern revealed. Each stumble is a point of adjustment, not a sentence. Second, be flexible with your methods, but not with your values. Maybe you can't work out in the morning, but you can walk in the evening. Maybe you can't give 3 hours of deep focus, but you can give 30 sincere minutes. Discipline isn't rigidity in method, it's loyalty to intent. Third, include rest in your structure. Rest isn't a detour, it's support. Even the hard alternates between beating and pausing. Everything that pulses also breathes. Fourth, don't confuse discipline with emotional numbness. To be disciplined doesn't mean to be cold. You can feel, you should feel, but act anyway, without denial, without self-sabotage. The balance between discipline and humanity lives right there, in recognizing you are a work in progress, and that, for that very reason, you deserve respect while evolving. Lasting strength is born from that understanding. It's the kind that knows when to push with power and when to step back with wisdom. The modern world glorifies excess, toxic productivity, nonstop performance. But ancient wisdom knew true power lies in knowing when to pause and when to begin again. Discipline is not perfection. It's persistence with wisdom, effort with awareness, consistency with compassion. And when you find that balance, something shifts. You stop punishing yourself and start guiding yourself. You stop fighting yourself and start walking with yourself. In the end, the goal isn't to become a machine. It's to become a whole human being, steady, yet alive, responsible, yet kind, committed, yet free. And maybe this kind of discipline, human, imperfect, ongoing, is exactly what prepares you for what comes next. Because after understanding motivation, cultivating discipline, facing hostile environments, and learning to move with softness, one final question remains. How do we make all of this last? How do we turn this path into a way of life, not just a passing phase? Discipline is not about rigidity, nor is it about living at war with yourself. In truth, discipline is an act of care, a quiet reminder that you deserve a life guided by intention, not impulse. While the world screams for results, for visibility, for speed, discipline whispers, slow down, keep going, even without applause, even if no one notices, even if it takes time. Discipline is what remains when everything else falls apart. It's the invisible thread connecting who you are today to who you chose to become. Along the way, you will fail. There will be days when you stumble, moments when everything feels meaningless. But it's in those very moments that discipline reveals its nobility. It does not demand perfection, only your return. Marcus Aurelius didn't seek admiration. He sought coherence, an intimate loyalty to his principles. And perhaps it is the greatest act of strength anyone can offer, to keep being what you believe in, even when no one is watching. If at any point in this video, something felt like it was speaking directly to you, if a single line touched something you've been ignoring, then share it with the world. Like the video if it moved you. Subscribe to the channel if you want to make this path a consistent practice. Turn on notifications so these reflections can reach you, even on the stormy days. And if you feel called, leave a comment. Share your story, your battle, or simply the thought that kept echoing after the silence. Because philosophy doesn't live in books. It lives in actions, in habits, in how you respond, even to the end of a video. Here, we walk this path together, not chasing perfection, but seeking clarity, strength, and a little more wisdom with every step.